What is up, and welcome to the American Regularis Podcast. I am your host, JD Walter. This is episode number 43. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Spotify, wherever it is you're listening to this. Follow me on Twitter at reg_American1. Email me at AmericanRegularisPodcast@gmail.com if you have anything you'd like to say to me. Or DM me on Twitter. Doesn't matter. X, as they call it. And tell your friends. Let the people know. All right. Again, I've been slow to get these podcasts out, and I felt compelled to do it today. I'm going to try to get back to at least once a week. I would like to try to get to up to 2 podcasts a week if possible, so expect more podcasts in the near future. This one, however, will be on the shorter side. Basically between winter storms, kids and family being sick, yada, 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 I've slowed down, but I felt compelled to do this podcast early this morning. I usually do these at night because I woke this morning to the news that Biden had just released what I have to believe is his final round of pardons. Now, if you're tracking on this, that means this is the morning that Trump will soon be inaugurated. I hope within the next day or two to also put a podcast out about the inauguration, to see what he does on his first day. Hopefully, he's going to keep his promise, which we know politicians are not wont to do often, but hopefully he'll keep his pardon of Ross Ulbricht going. So we'll talk about that pardon later. Today we're going to talk about the Biden pardons, which are tragically unsurprising. We have, over the Biden administration, it's been a long 4 years, and I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about during Trump's administration. And I was giving one of my friends a little bit of grief the other day about him basically saying something that led to kind of the right side of history thing I like to bring up a lot, which is a progressive thing. Man, I got to tell you though, he's a Trump guy, and one of his arguments, I don't even remember what it was, but there is no doubt when we look back on the Biden administration in the next 10 years, 20 years, 200 years, there is going to be a lot of head scratching, and if we have any sort of improvement in journalism and truthful historianism, we are going to have a lot to read and write about and scratch our heads about with this Biden administration. If you have to sum it up concisely, which is hard because, like I said, a long 4 years, so much has happened between Ukraine and Hunter Biden and obviously the tyrannical COVID regime. You have to just say this was a corrupt and senile 4 years for this administration. And we knew Biden was corrupt in the way that we know lifelong politicians are corrupt. And back even during the 2020 campaign against Donald Trump, I did not believe that Biden would stay in the race. I thought he was simply too old and senile to do it. But he did. And then obviously he was so senile. We have 4 years of the most ridiculous footage ever, though he was always sharp as a tack behind closed doors, that he couldn't even run. And they had to put in an absolutely unlikable, uncharismatic shrew of a woman to run for him. But the corruption part is what I want to focus on today, because it is such a great example of just what I think at large the American people have come to expect from its government. And what I mean by that, we've seen over the years, public trust in the government is at such an all-time low. When I was a kid, And obviously there's the naivete that comes with being a kid and the childlike ignorance. But, the USA, right? The government, Reagan. I didn't expect Bush or Clinton to be bad guys or anything. We're the good guys. Clearly, we're the city on the hill. We're the shining light in the dark. And over this time, especially after 9/11, and we've seen this increase in power and foreign policy, we've just seen trust for the government go down and down and down. And last night, I think, is a sterling example of how the oligarchs, all governments are oligarchies, but the people in charge, these people in charge, have really just shown their true colors, which they do all the time, but this is such a blatant one. And as they do it and do it and do it, even people that aren't keeping their ear to the ground all the time and paying attention, they can't help but notice just how often the government is screwing over the citizens, and how often when they want to actually get something done, it's generally for themselves. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about yet, last night Biden pardoned one last group of people, and these were the big ones. Anthony Fauci, General Milley, members of the January 6th committee, including Adam Schiff and a laundry list of these people. All right. And this is all blanket immunity, basically, for all the people that so egregiously harm the American citizens with their policies and their political ambitions and machinations. And their only excuse is because Trump is some sort of novel and unique fascist evil that's going to take the office. And obviously these guys are all saints, none of them sinners, but we have to give them these big pardons because we just don't know what this crazy guy is going to do. If you haven't been paying attention, this has been their excuse for damn near everything, especially when it comes to their failings, their corruption, and their general policies. It's unique circumstances. A lot of times, War Power Acts and the Patriot Act and the NDAA, it's like, hey, these are extraordinary circumstances. We have to do this legislation. We have to pass these laws or these executive orders because we're living in an unprecedented time. Now, they use that exact same logic. They use that exact same threat. But instead of the terrorists or the Russians or anyone, now that unique existential threat that leads to these extraordinary circumstances that they must use their powers like they never wanted to. They never wanted to use these powers, but they have to. We live in uncertain times. There's an existential threat going on, and it's the fact that they lost. They lost. And the guy that they're losing to, due to the Electoral College and the popular vote, whatever, is an existential threat. He's a unique evil. And for that reason, they don't want to, but they've got to use all these powers in ways that they weren't meant to use. Even the AP, they write this about this newest and final string of pardons. These are exceptional circumstances, and I cannot in good conscience do nothing, Biden said. Excuse me, wrong part. AP writes this: Biden, a Democrat, has used the power in the broadest and most untested way possible. What does that mean? He's abusing it. That's one way of saying he's abusing it. Right? Or at least he's doing it in a way that's more corrupt than other people have ever done it. To pardon those who have not even been investigated. Now, they haven't even been investigated. Why? Because the Biden administration, this government, isn't going to investigate itself. This is like whenever there's a terrible mishap with law enforcement and then they run an investigation, they find themselves not guilty. Well, these guys don't even warrant an investigation. There's nothing to see here. Of course, we're going to give these blanket pardons to what may or not remember Hunter Biden's pardon, who Karine Jean-Pierre, Joe Biden, all directly asked multiple times, are you going to pardon Hunter Biden? They say, no, that's against our ethics. That's not what we're here for. I'm a man of integrity. I give you my word. But then they did. And why did they? Because it's unusual existential threat circumstances and Donald Trump, it's a unique thing. So I have to do it for Hunter. And then his pardon not only pardons all of his gun charge crimes and crack crimes and lying crimes or whatever. I don't even remember the slew of them. But also for anything and everything that might have ever been a crime, like if he ripped the tag off a mattress, it all goes. And it went clear back to, I believe, 2014 or 2012. Basically, this really arbitrary date, they would have you believe, that just very conveniently precludes any of Hunter's involvement in Ukraine and Burisma. That was just happenstance. That is corruption, guys. And they're doing it again with Anthony Fauci, who in my mind might be the biggest criminal of this administration, more so than Biden or anyone. It's unbelievable. And then also the January 6th committee. And why are they doing the January 6th committee? Well, this will clearly be because Trump's a unique evil and they went after him and his people. But does anyone think that they ran an honest committee? Do we think we got to see all the tapes? Was there any transparency? Was there lying? Were there feds? We know there were now. But it's not about that. It's not, hey, these guys scratched our back with doing dirty work and going against the rule of law, so we're going to watch them. The American populace, the American citizens aren't going to buy this. Some will. The farthest left will say, well, they got to. Trump's coming in, and he's going to be an autocrat that, maybe to an extent he will, but he's going to be some sort of autocrat that goes after every person. I'm worried that I voted for him. He's going to go against me on that. There's the delusional far left on that, and then there's all the other people that are going to say, man, maybe they don't trust Trump. I don't. But there's going to be all these people that say, this is egregious. How many people need to be pardoned? And they're pardoned for this, they're pardoned for that. We can't even look into it. We're going to pardon them before we even look into it. Is that due process? It's definitely not the rule of law. Biden and his administration have routinely stated they weren't going to pardon Hunter. They always preach about democracy and the will of the people, but then they act as oligarchs above the law, championing themselves as heroes of the people and vanguards against the fascist Donald Trump and these devout adherents to the rule of law, right? These are the by-the-book figures, right? These are statesmen, a bunch of Cincinnatis, right? They're doing it just for love of the game and honor and duty and obligation. And then they ride off into the sunset, scot-free, in the 11th hour. And their only excuse for all this is Trump being a unique and novel enemy of freedom and democracy. And I just don't think the American citizens will buy it. The distrust in the government has just steadily decreased, which is good. And this is just one final example that this corrupt administration has given people to see. Now you can say, oh, it's broad and novel and unprecedented use of this power. But we know what that is. It's an abuse of this power. What it is the Democrats on their last 24 hours of their administration saying, we will once again not be held accountable for our crimes, for our faults, for our failings. And we're going to blame that all on Donald Trump. We either blame it on what he did before or what he's going to do now. But our 4 years of locking down society, of taking away freedoms, of giving money to one of the most corrupt governments, of propagating and cheerleading and supporting these wars that have left so many kids dead and have ruined and the economic and medical policies that have left so many people without jobs or unable to see their families' funerals or arrests when they shut down churches. Like, all of these things, that was either Trump's fault from his previous administration, or it'll be Trump's fault that we had to do it for this administration. It wasn't them. Biden's administration, his legacy, when we look at it today, when we look at it tomorrow, when we look at it at the end of Trump's administration, or when we look at it right before we're gray old men getting ready to roll into the grave, we will see 4 years of corruption and senility. And to that end, I'm using the administration a lot because we don't know how much Biden's actually doing on this. Is this Anthony Blinken's? Is this who's doing all this? Mike Johnson the other day, they said Biden didn't even remember some of the executive orders he signed, which isn't surprising to any of us. We've known this. We know Biden's been, look, they had to cut, they've had to cut when he can do interviews. He never gave interviews like less than anyone. Never takes questions. He always just wanders off the stage as quickly as he can, which is slow because he gets lost a lot. As soon as possible, he gets off the stage. Doesn't answer. Isn't held accountable through speaking with the press. Isn't going to be held accountable through all this. And by the way, if these guys are believers in the American government, if they are believers in due process and rule of law, regardless of if Trump is the president or not, this shows that they have, zero faith in the judicial system? For a country that puts more people in jail per capita than damn near anyone, they have no faith in the judicial system. That's what that shows. Even if Trump's a unique evil, right? These executive orders that we see, these presidential pardons, and I'm for some of them. I said earlier, I think Biden's pardoned over 2,500 people. Now, a lot of those are like drug offenses and things I'm fine with him pardoning. But these big ones here, what does that show us? They know there's no checks and balances. They know that the executive branch runs wild. And they know that because they want that to be the case. They want to have all the executive power, and they want to abuse it constantly. And now these pardons say, not only are we going to abuse it, we're not even going to attempt to pretend that we will be held into account for all of our sins, for all of our transgressions, for all of our crimes. In the next 4 years, we're going to see Trump do a lot of things wrong, and I'll be here to comment on them. But for them to place themselves on a pedestal higher is laughable. This administration has been more corrupt than any administration I have seen. They've been more authoritarian than Trump's 2016 administration, hands down. And he has a lot on his plate about 2020 with COVID and many other things. And as this goes on, we as a nation are just going to see more and more examples. And if I can find anything good about this, and I think there is some good about this, I mean, I would love to see these guys get their just desserts. But at least we are going to have yet another huge, visible, obvious example of how governments, of how presidents, of how administrations and oligarchs and autocrats and tyrants and whatever you want to call them, at least we have one more sterling example of just what their true ambitions and interests and objectives are. It's not about getting you more freedoms It's not about having an economy that makes it easier for you to provide for your family and to live more comfortably. It's not about upholding American ideals, and it's certainly not really about the American citizens at large. We see that with the foreign policy all the time. It is clearly about them, about the empire, and about who gets to hold the scepter and control the American tax revenue. It's about money and power. It's not about you. It's about them, and can they have those things? And the more examples we see of this, even if it's CNN and the Associated Press or any of the corporate mainstream media, telling you about it through rose-tinted glasses and making it as flowery as possible, it's going to be clearly obvious to the American citizens as it goes on. They're just going to beat us over the head with examples of just how corrupt and greedy and immoral they are. And that is a good thing. All right. Short little podcast today. I'll try to deliver one soon about Trump's inauguration and his first day, because that'll give us a ton to talk about. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one. God bless.